Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. It is election night and a special episode of This in Nashville. We're going to check in on what we know so far about the state politics and voting in Middle Tennessee, what's going on at the polls now that they are officially closed, and we're going to find out about the local campaigns and, of course, any result that come in during this broadcast hour. Again, we are live. This is not a repeat. For regular listeners, know that I am in Studio A here talking with you. And again, the phone lines are going to be open because we want to take your election-related questions and comments. And before you call, think about some of the following questions. If you voted today, did your experience go smoothly? Besides the presidential race, what other results are you anxiously awaiting? What about the future? Do you have any predictions about what will happen tonight? We want to hear from you, so call us up, 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. All right, we're going to meet our guests for tonight's very special episode. Paige Pfleger is the criminal justice reporter for WPLN. Joining her is Jason Reinecke. He is associate professor at the School of Journalism and Strategic Media at MTSU. Good to see you both. Thanks for both of you joining us on this really special night.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, so we're going to talk about what we know right now. The polls are now officially closed here in Tennessee. Let's talk about what we know and what we can get into, what we're waiting to hear. Paige, what do we know? How did the election go smoothly in general?
Yeah, as of the latest news, there were no big problems, no big glitches at the polls, at least reported here in Nashville. And we do know that Tennessee has already been called for President Donald Trump, and that Marsha Blackburn's race has also been called for U.S. Senate. So Marsha Blackburn was facing off with Gloria Johnson, Democrat who's known for the Tennessee 3 fame. The latest reporting from the state shows Blackburn with about 140,000 votes and Johnson with about 35K. So,
okay. All right. Thank you for that. Yes. Dr. Reinecke, do we know about the number of mail-in and early person voting in Tennessee? Do we know that number?
Yeah, we do. We know pretty closely that about 45 to 50% of the registered voters in the state early voted or mail-in absentee voted before Election Day even came around. And so we're waiting to see how many more turned out today.
What about the numbers for Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, so there's a lot of variability county to county. Unfortunately, Davidson County is toward the bottom of the early voting list, but on the upside, maybe that means there was more Election Day turnout this time around. Only about 41% of registered voters in Davidson County voted early, but we'll see where that final number ends up. At the higher end of things, Williamson County, where Franklin is, had about 61% turnout for early voting. And so, of course, that then leaves fewer people to turn out on Election Day. So, and then Rutherford County, where MTSU, where I'm from, is about 52%, we're kind of right in the middle there.
Okay, I'm curious about this, and I'm sure people who are maybe watching cable news or listening to us have this question. Do the numbers offer any clue into what we can expect results-wise tonight?
Boy, that's a really great question. I think some of the national research and reporting has suggested that maybe there's a little bit more Republican early voting turnout than we've seen in the past. If we sort of extrapolate that Tennessee is a red state, Williamson County, kind of the headquarters of the Republican Party in the state in a lot of ways, a lot of early turnout there. We don't have a direct, absolute evidence comparison there, but maybe there's some evidence to suggest, that there's a little bit more Republican turnout than we would have expected previously in early voting. But, the numbers, we'll wait for the final numbers to come in to say something definitive about that.
We will anxiously await the final numbers to come in. All right, now, Paige, Davidson County saw a strong start to Election Day voting this morning. Several locations were reporting lines even before they opened their doors. Davidson County electors, Administrator Jeff Roberts, he told us that by 4 o'clock this afternoon, more than 17,000 voters cast their ballots so far, compared to 14,000 at the same time in 2020. People are really excited about voting. We get that. You were on the ground today. Tell us, what was it like?
Yeah, so I went to a few polling places on the east side this morning before I came into the office. And a lot of them said exactly that they had a lot of folks, a big rush first thing in the morning, people who were about to head into work, and then kind of more of a steady stream of voters in the afternoon. And they were anticipating, again, an end of day rush leading up to the 7 o'clock cutoff time. So I talked to a lot of voters today, but one of my favorites was actually this woman, Micah Haynes. She brought her friend Jordan with her to the polls to vote.
You got this, Jordan. Don't forget to take a picture. Today he was very 50-50. And I majored in political science and have a huge passion for politics. And so we spent about an hour and a half talking about both candidates. So I voted for Kamala. So I think he was on the fence as a Trump supporter. And I kind of convinced him to look at both sides and balance out kind of both candidates and their sides. And he had some questions about, the economy, the border, healthcare. And I just pointed out how strong Kamala's stance is on all those topics and how articulate she is in her policies. And so I think once he realized that, if I'm not giving it away, but he started to see that more clearly. So it made me really happy that I could convince someone that was on one side to kind of maybe see the other side, even as someone that's been a Republican for many, many years. So she not only convinced her friend to vote today, but she also convinced her friend who was leaning towards Trump to actually vote for Kamala Harris. So it was just kind of an interesting, you do wonder with early voting being so available and there being so many days and so many locations, like what gets people out today. And it was great to see, some people making last minute decisions being pushed by their friends to show up and show out at the polls.
That's right. You got to encourage your friends to take part in our democracy. Okay, so WPLN's Power and Equity reporter Marianna Bacallao is joining us now live. Marianna, how is it going?
It's going. I am outside Marsha Blackburn's watch party for election night here in Franklin. The AP has just called the race in her favor over State Representative Gloria Johnson from Knoxville. Obviously, Khalil, we're in a red state. It would have taken a big shakeup for her not to hold on to her seat, but we have seen Democrats laying the groundwork the past 2 years, particularly at the local level and more Republican-leaning areas immediately surrounding Nashville. Johnson, her opponent, of course, as Paige was saying earlier, she has that name recognition being a part of the Tennessee Three, the three lawmakers who staged a gun reform protest on the House floor after the Covenant school shooting. And since then, we've seen a lot of support for Johnson and her colleagues in passing gun safety laws. The Republican supermajority in the state house has been really adamant about blocking gun reform, including a red flag law initially proposed by Governor Bill Lee. That's shaken some moms who in the past have voted Republican pretty reliably. We saw a lot of pushback from moms and children alike, staging protests at the Capitol in the wake of Covenant, and again this past legislative session. So it could end up being a key issue for voters this election, just probably not for these federal races that are on the ballot or these statewide races like the Senate race.
In all three of these races, we've got incumbent Republicans who are kind of expected to hold on to their seats because of partisan gerrymandering. Do you think could there be any surprises going on?
Well, there are, I believe at the federal level, we're seeing reliably Republicans are holding on to their seats. One race that seems a little bit closer than the others might be the 7th congressional district, where Republican incumbent Mark Green is going up against former Nashville Mayor Megan Barry. She has raised the most out of any Democrat in the state. She has a lot of name recognition. She's been campaigning hard, particularly on addressing the opioid crisis after her son died of an overdose. Meanwhile, Mark Green got a little bit of a September surprise when his wife publicly accused him of having an extramarital affair with a Washington journalist. That's going to be top of mind for voters when they go into the voting booth. But we're a red state, Khalil, so we'll see if those things are enough to really sway voters.
And now you're at Marsha Blackburn's watch party. What are you seeing so far? What's the vibe like there?
It's at the Hilton Hotel. It's a very upscale vibe here. I have not been able to get inside as of yet. The parking lot is really full. It was hard to get a parking spot. I've seen a lot of sheriff vehicles and a lot of very snappy dressers. So hoping to get inside eventually.
They're not letting you in because of some dress code violation, are they?
No, I am dressed snazzy as well, Khalil. It's just a matter of getting in touch with the right people. But I will try again right after this interview.
All right. Let's hope you make it happen. We want you to get in there to give us some more reporting about what happens here at Marsha Blackburn's watch party. That is WPLN's power and equity reporter, Marianna Bacallao. Marianna, stay safe, have fun, and let us know what's going on, okay?
All right. Thank you, Khalil.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. This is Nashville, and we are doing our election night coverage. We want to hear from you, so give us a call, 615-760-2000. We have a caller who's been patiently waiting on the line, Sarah Jane in East Nashville. Sarah Jane, thank you so much for calling us. What would you like to share?
Hi there. Today I finally went and voted. I'm one of the procrastinators that actually didn't do the early voting. And I got to my polling location, which is right behind my house. I can see it from my backyard. It's just right behind my house. And it's where I've always voted. And I handed them my ID, and they said, "Oh, you're at a different polling location." And I said, "My house is like right there." Like, there's no way. And they said, "Yeah, a lot of people have been getting that." And it just really frustrated me because it doesn't make any sense location-wise. And I just wonder, am I a victim of this redistricting, gerrymandering kind of thing? But I had to get on Ellington Parkway and go and exit down and go to the school, and I did. I was very happy to see, they were all pretty line-free at that point. I guess people figured the lines were long at the last minute, but I was able to get in and out and get my vote counted. But I just wanted to share that I'm not alone. Even at the other school, they said, "Oh, yeah, we've seen a lot of that." So it's weird. In East Nashville, they're going to move people all around in illogical ways. Like, it feels a little bit like voter suppression.
I understand what you're saying.
And
Look,
I did not get a notice saying that had happened. Like, no, there was nothing that came in the mail and said, "We've changed your polling location." So
did you happen to check your registration and polling location online, Sarah Jane?
I did not. I didn't, because I've always just gone there. It's like I can sit in my backyard and see the school. It never would think like my polling location was going to change.
I understand. Look, I'm a fellow procrastinator as well. On Halloween night, I decided, hey, I could go early vote on the last day of availability or take a nap. The nap won, but I got up early and voted this morning in East Nashville as well. Thankfully, there were no long lines. Sarah Jane, thank you so much for calling, and we're so happy that you were able to get your vote in.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all the poll workers that are out there volunteering and working hard to make sure we have, elections that are fair and safe.
Amen. Amen to that. Thank you. Have a good night, Sarah Jane.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, so I do want to talk about something, Paige. There's a process for calling the winners of elections. That's the Associated Press has called for more than 170 years. The polls closed at 7. Pretty quickly, they called the state.
2 minutes.
For former President Trump and Marsha Blackburn to retain her Senate seat. What's the process like for calling these elections?
Yeah, so the Associated Press is kind of the gold standard. So when you hear us say this race has been called, we're going based on the Associated Press's call. And the way that it works, and the AP actually posted this really great explainer on their website. So if you just look up AP, How We Call Races, it will tell you a little bit about it. But basically what they do is they won't call a race until the winner has such a large amount of votes that the loser could never catch up. So there would be no way, even if all of the votes aren't in yet, there would be no way that the person that they call as the winner would not end up winning. So, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's kind of the simple explainer of how they kind of do that.
It's big time math going on.
Yeah. And we work in words.
Yes, we do. Thank you for that. But I feel like I do understand.
Yes.
All right. Now, Dr. Reineke, do you have any sense at all of when the presidential race will be called?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, not really. And I think this is one of those things that if someone tells you they do know when it's going to be called, then that's a pretty good indication that that person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Okay.
I think it's probably not going to be tonight. Your listeners may remember that last time around in 2020, it was Saturday before the presidential race was called. I don't know if it's going to take that long for votes to be tallied and decisions to be made in that regard this time around. But there are a number of lawsuits also that have already been filed and that are pending. So even once votes are counted, we may still not know for sure who the ultimate winner of the election is, depending on how things go through the courts. And so we may be in for a long haul.
Why do things take so long?
Well, different states have different procedures for counting. Some are faster than others. And of course, some of the big swing states this time around, Arizona and Nevada, out on the Pacific time zone, have longer counting procedures as well. And so it goes late into the night for us, and then it goes late into the night for them. And then there may be recounts that are part of the process as well. And so it's really all about getting the count right. Mm-hmm. And it's about following the policies and procedures in the state in question as well. And so it's ultimately more important, just like a principle in journalism, it's more important to get it right than get it fast. We'd like to have both of those things, but getting it right is the most important thing.
That's right. All right, now, Paige, besides the presidential and congressional races, what other results are folks waiting to hear about?
Yeah, locally here, one of the big things is the transit referendum. So there was only one referendum on your ballot here in Davidson County, and that referendum was basically all about transit, bolstering our bus transit system, putting in more sidewalks in Nashville. Notoriously, we are not a pedestrian-friendly city, and this is a city that runs on cars. And so the transit referendum would increase taxes in order to tackle those projects. And our transit reporter, who we'll hear from later in the hour, our Metro reporter, Cynthia Abrams, has been covering that transit referendum, and she's actually at the referendum watch party. So we'll hear from her later.
We are definitely going to tune in and hear from her later, but we also want to hear from you. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to keep talking with our guests and you. You join the conversation. Call us up, 615-760-2000. This is not a repeat. I am live in studio, 615-760-2000. Give us a call. We want to hear from you on this election night. We'll be right back. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. It is election night in America, and we're holding a live episode to help you sort through all of the news about the electoral votes, polls, and all the other stories related to this election. With us are WPLN's Paige Pfleger and MTSU's Dr. Jason Reineke. We also want to hear from you. Look, I know a lot of you who may be listening are used to us re-airing the episode that we first broadcast at noon today. However, I am very live and direct with my guests. If they weren't here, I'd be hallucinating. And I'm totally not. We're here. So call us and tell us what's on your mind for this election. How do you think the polling was handled during the election? What did you do to engage in the election this year? Did you donate money? Did you volunteer for a campaign? Or did you decide to work as a poll official? And are you satisfied with the news media's reporting of the election? And if not, or if so, what would you like to see change? Call us up at 615-760-2000 to chime in. That's 615-760-2000. Now, Dr. Reineke, I think we all can agree that the way the media is set up right now, with Democrats and Republicans living in two different separate media and information worlds, some would say realities, that close races are good for news media. They keep people listening, watching, clicking, and engaging. Are poll results being used to further a certain narrative in the media these days?
Well, I don't think they're being misconstrued in any way. I think that close races are close races, and we can't read too much into any single poll, especially when it's within the margin of error, which is, the accountable amount of the poll that we just don't know about for sure in terms of the percentages that overlap. I think, coverage of that is generally better at directing attention to the sounds and images and things that we're trying to put in front of audiences for sure. But a close race is a close race. And when that's all we can say about it, that's what we have to say.
Here's a heavy question for you. Do balance, fairness, and accuracy conflict with each other in today's media landscape?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I talk about it with my graduate students a lot. I mean, we have sometimes values that are in harmony as journalists. We sometimes have values that are not so much in harmony with each other. So if we look at a situation and balance isn't consistent with the facts, that's a problem. We've got to adhere to the facts. People often say they only want to hear the facts from news media, but then I guess the question is which facts, because we have to make determinations about what we include in the limited time and space that we have to put in front of audience members. So it's a difficult job. The values that we all care about sometimes come into conflict with each other, and we have to make tough decisions sometimes about things like balance and fairness and both sides versus the ultimate goal, which is to give the audience the truth of the situation so that they can make informed decisions.
And you said something key there, the truth in the situation so the audience can make informed decisions. And sometimes to me, it feels like the dissonance that's happening within journalism, certain news organizations recover and report stories one way, others make their own choices. That dissonance has created a mistrust in media as a whole in journalism from people. How do we begin to earn or grow that trust again?
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is key to your question is the idea of media as a whole or media as a monolith, and how that gets separated off in people's minds from the media that they personally choose to consume. Famously, Fox News often says that it's the number one news organization, but it's different from the mainstream media. Well, if you're number one, you're kind of by definition the mainstream media. Listeners to WPLN have a definite preference for the content that you provide for them. And so I think the key is to recognize that there really isn't any such thing as one sole monolithic media, and then to evaluate the content and the products and the sources individually in terms of their quality, and to do that critically, and to do that as a media literate person and somebody who asks the right questions about the media and the sources that they're getting their information from.
All right. We asked for you to call, and you all have answered. We're going to go to Victor in Antioch. Victor, thank you for calling us on election night. What would you like to share?
Well, I was born here in Tennessee, and I just remember when I was a child that this was a Democratic state. And at that time, West and Middle were totally Democrat and East was Republican. And I'd like to see us get back to that. And I'd like to see us in the country get back to getting away from swing states where the candidates have to go to every state and where our votes count for in the election.
I agree. Thank you so much for
And I
calling.
want you to know that I love the voting machines in Tennessee.
All right. What do you love so much about them?
I like the way they work because I have been in other states and I know they're different.
Hey, we got something going with our voting machines. Number one, Paige?
Well, I was just going to say, to his point, he's absolutely right that Tennessee has been a red state since 2000, and that was Trump has consistently won Tennessee over the last couple of years, but it was the last Democrat to win the presidential nomination in Tennessee. It was in 1992 and 1996 when it was President Bill Clinton, Al Gore as his vice president, and then Al Gore ran for president in 2000 and he lost the state to George W. Bush, and it's been red since then.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for that, Paige. And thank you, Victor, for calling us here on election night. Really appreciate it, my friend. All right. So, you know what? I was going to ask another question, but we're going to go to another caller. We've got Amanda in Donaldson. Amanda, thank you for calling us. What would you like to share?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am born and raised in Nashville, and I know that there's a lot of people that are sitting on very opposite ends of things right now out there, especially in this area. But I've found that it's been really cool to use this opportunity this year to be able to highlight for my children really what the process looks like. And even if things lean towards towards that area, towards Harris. I got tongue-tied. If things start leaning towards Harris, and that's not something that you particularly are excited about, then you can at least, it's an opportunity to say, hey, this is a historical moment. And so there's at least like silver linings to look for there. There's silver linings on both sides. And I just hope that everyone in such a blended country can find a way to find whatever makes this easier for them.
I really appreciate that, Amanda. It's a sentiment that I woke up with early this morning. Well, I had it for longer, but this morning it really made itself pronounced to me that whoever wins this election, half of the country is going to be upset.
Absolutely.
And there's work that we are going to have to do as Americans to come to accord. On our noon broadcast, I was asking our guests, what is it going to take for us to get back to a sense of compromise when it comes to our laws and the issues that we face? When you think about that, Amanda, you're a voter, you're a person out there, and I'm sure you're talking to your community members and friends and family about the issues that are heavy in this election and the issues that are around kind of constantly. What do you think it's going to take for us to come to a place where we can actually not only talk to each other, but come to a level of compromise on these issues that divide us so deeply?
I think that sitting and actually talking is going to be the really only thing that's going to do it. People stopping and taking a breath and saying, these are people I love and I value their opinion. And so, realizing that what we're seeing really on the most of what we're hearing and seeing is polarizing. And we all really live in the middle, and we just have to recognize where our commonalities are. Start talking about and building those foundations on the things that we have in common with each other instead of only focusing on those divides, because that's what's going to help zip up those divides.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for calling us on this election night, Amanda. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much, and thank you for your coverage. Y'all are awesome.
Yes, we're going to keep on doing it. That's what we're doing. Paige, you've been reporting on this election for quite a while.
Yes.
Now, what are you hearing are the key issues that are influencing most of the electors this morning? Some of the issues that we just talked about that are separating us, dividing us.
I actually think it's so interesting what Amanda said, because that was one of the takeaways that I heard today versus when I went and talked to some early voters. When I talked to early voters, it was very issue heavy, right? But then today, there were a lot of people who were showing up to the polls and talking about casting their votes so that we could find unity and a hope for finding unity and candidates who would unite us instead of divide us. So it's interesting that's something that we're all thinking about today. I think as it gets closer to being real, that's more something we need to grapple with. But obviously, one big issue is the economy. I think you hear that from the good majority of voters. Another big issue that we've heard a lot from people here in Tennessee, which is honestly kind of surprising, was women's rights and abortion. Our newsroom has heard from a lot of voters who felt motivated to vote specifically for Kamala Harris because of that. And I met a man named Ricardo Davis, who was one of them. He's the father of 6 girls.
My shirt says, Dad, Daughter Squad, Unbreakable Bond. Well, I represent my children, you know what I'm saying? And I care about their thoughts and what their beliefs are. Not all of them are old enough to really vote and make their own choices right now. But I think it's important that as fathers that we step up for women and women's rights.
And as you know, Tennessee has one of the strictest abortion bans in the country, with no exceptions for rape or incest. But Harris has vowed to restore reproductive freedoms or to veto any national abortion ban that would come across her desk.
All right. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and it's election night, y'all. We're here to help you for the hour to help you figure out and break down and understand the races on the national, state, and local levels. We want to hear from you, so give us a call, 615-760-2000, 615-760-2000. And this is not a recording. We are live and direct. You know, Dr. Reineke, I do want to ask you about this. It seems like every presidential election, it's more expensive than the previous one. Open Secrets, a group that tracks election spending, estimates that the 2024 federal election cycle will cost nearly, and this is not a joke, $16 billion. $16 billion. It was around $15 billion in 2020. Doctor, what did political spending look like in Tennessee? What does it look like in Tennessee, and who kind of does it favor?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. And just to add on to the national numbers there, $1 billion spent just in the last week of the election cycle here. And so if you dig into some of the ad spending in Tennessee, Democrats spent about $4.2 million in the state, and Republicans spent about $16.4 million in the state. And so that's $20.8 million total out of that $10 to $16 billion number that we're kind of looking at and estimating at this point. And so, you know, $20 million is a lot of money. It's 0.2% or less of the total national spending on this election. And that kind of gives you an idea of what the parties and the players at the national level think about in terms of what they need to do to accomplish what their goals are in the state of Tennessee. Now, we've seen, especially with the sort of cracked Nashville 3 gerrymandered congressional districts, maybe a little bit more advertising, competitive advertising there than we might have expected to see. Some of that might be strategic to kind of stretch the field. Democrats have a national fundraising advantage this time around. And so if they can spend money in races that maybe, you know, aren't as competitive, maybe they can force Republicans to spend more money in those races as well. But when we're looking at Tennessee, we are really talking about a drop in the bucket in terms of the spending on political campaigns and particularly ads in this state.
I have a suggestion for Democrats, Republicans, independent parties, and the like. How about a little bit less on ad spending and put some of that money into education? $16 billion. I'm sure we could use that in some form or fashion. Okay, we're going to move to phone calls. We got Allie in Franklin. Allie, thank you for holding. Thank you for calling. What do you want to share?
Hi, thanks for having me on the show. Well, I have always have a strong belief on the democracy of...
Ali, you broke up. Say it again, my friend.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Ali, are you with us? Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I wanted to share a little bit of my opinion that I always trust the democracy and the process of the electoral elections in this country and have a great trust and belief in that. But I wanted to ask our guests over here, like, what are their thoughts on the issue if there are any kind of election has been rigged or has been influenced by their sources or adversaries? Is there any truth in that or not?
Yeah, I think that's a very serious question, Ali, and very serious questions demand very serious evidence in order to demonstrate that something like that has happened. I think it's great for us to be vigilant about the protection of our democracy, and I think that's part of what people are going to the polls to protect this time around. When it comes to things like accusations that vote counts aren't accurate or votes have been rigged or things like that, there is just not widespread evidence that that has happened in the United States in the past. and at least not in the recent past. And if there are some accusations made about that this time around, they're going to have to be proved beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that demands a lot of very solid evidence to do.
Ali, your call dropped. Hopefully you were able to hear that answer. And thank you, my friend, for giving us a call. Okay, we're going to take one last break. When we come back, we're going to look at some of the early returns and maybe find out some news on this transit referendum that means so much to Middle Tennesseans and Nashvillians. And we want to hear from you. Call us up, 615-760-2000. We got 2 calls on the line. Hold. We will be back with you in about 60 seconds. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Akolona, and this is Nashville. Welcome back to election night here at This is Nashville. As the numbers and polls close across the country and the numbers come in, we're here to help you understand what the results mean. Still with us are WPLN's Paige Pfleger and MTSU's Dr. Jason Reineke. And we want you to be a part of the conversation as well, so give us a call, 615-760-2000, to answer any of the following questions. What are your thoughts about the election so far? If you live in Davidson County, have you had your hands on a referendum ballot? Did you vote for or against it? Ask us, tell us why. And what changes would you want to see made to our democratic process before the next election? You can answer those or share a question or comment of your own. Call us up at 615-760-2000. Okay, speaking about the transit referendum, WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams is joining us now live. Cynthia, we hear it going on behind you. Where are you reporting from?
Yes, hi Khalil. I am here at the Transit Watch Party in the Gulch. It's pretty exciting. There's a lot of people in this room around me eating, chatting. There's palpable excitement. I've seen various Metro Council members, community members, and of course, Mayor Freddie O'Connell is here. He is leading the charge for this proposal.
Okay, now, Cynthia, I'm glad you're there. I'm glad the vibe is good and you're having a good time. Answer this for me. In 2018, then Mayor Megan Barry tried to pass a plan that would have produced dedicated transit funding for the first time. Give us a reminder, what happened then?
Yeah, so in 2018, Megan Barry put forth Nashville's first ever attempt at pursuing dedicated transit funding. It was a plan that would have seen light rail added to Nashville. There were some pretty big infrastructure changes like a downtown tunnel, and ultimately Nashvillians said no, with a resounding 64% of voters voting that proposal down.
So what's different this time around?
Yeah, so this year's proposal looks pretty different. Back in 2018, that plan would have raised 4 different types of taxes to fund that proposal. Now there's only one type of tax, the sales tax, that would be raised to fund this pretty different proposal. There's no light rail, there's no downtown tunnel. Instead, there's a heavy emphasis on infrastructure like new sidewalks, bike lanes, as well as improved bus service. So a bus rapid transit network, and higher frequency, more expanded routes across Nashville.
All right, so what does it really seem like on the ground? I know you've been talking to voters for the past couple weeks on this. Are voters weighing in for or against?
Yeah, just a couple hours ago, I was at a poll out in North Nashville. There were a lot of people voting, and there were a lot of people voting different ways on transit. I spoke to a number of voters who were voting for. They were adamant that this transit proposal is something that Nashville really needs, especially as it's continuing to grow. I also spoke to some voters who felt like they didn't really know that much about the referendum, and they opted to abstain from voting at all. I also spoke to one voter who is transit reliant. He takes the bus every single day to get to work all across town. He buses to Hermitage from North Nashville, and yet he opted to vote against the transit referendum because he felt like bus riders like himself weren't involved enough in the creation of the proposal. So there's a lot of different feelings out there. I've also heard a lot of concerns around cost. Raising the sales tax is a part of the referendum. It would be raised by a half cent. And so I think that's, for people who are on the fence, it's really coming down to that cost element. For people who are solidly in favor, it's really seeing dedicated transit funding is something that Nashville needs.
All right. We're going to keep our eyes on what's going on, and we're going to keep in touch with you, Cindy. Thank you so much for being with us, and take care of yourself out there, all right?
Thanks, Khalil.
All right. That was Cynthia Abrams, WPLN's Metro reporter at the watch party for the transit referendum. We're going to go to the phones. We got Jacob in Hermitage. Jacob, thanks for waiting. What would you like to share with us?
Hi, Khalil. Thanks for having me on. I am glad to hear the transit referendum mentioned on the program. I'm calling because of the things on the ballot. There was a lot of important things, but the transit referendum was at the top of my list to vote for. Living in Hermitage, the edge of the county, it can often be a place where we don't see as much of that transit funding coming our way, but knowing that there were intentional things happening for Hermitage got me on board for the sales tax increase. So I'm excited to see our number 6 bus go from every hour to every 15 minutes, and hopefully some changes to our We Go Star train out here.
All right. We will see how the results turn in for the transit referendum. Jacob, thank you so much for giving us a call, my friend. Have a good night. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay. I do. Well, you know what? We're going to go to another phone call. We got John, who's been waiting so patiently out in Charlotte. John, thank you for calling us, my friend. What would you like to share with us?
Well, we have minor wars going on all over the planet right now, and there's no telling, how much of this is going to die off or how much of it is going to escalate. And I tried to vote for someone that could step up like many of our former presidents have in this kind of a environment, and not let it get out of control, because the next war that gets out of control on a major scale is going to be a nuclear war.
That's what that's what you believe as far as the foreign policy environment is in play?
Absolutely. It might not start as a nuclear war, but it'll end up when somebody starts losing. Which side ever starts losing the war it's going to go to a nuclear war, because so many different countries have nuclear weapons.
That is the truth. That is the truth out there. Let me ask you this, Dr. Reineke, have you heard of people really being concerned about the current global geopolitical situation right now? We do have a war happening between Russia and Ukraine. We've got a war going on in the Middle East between Hamas and Israel, and now Lebanon is involved, and so is Hezbollah and parts of Iran. Is that a huge concern for folks as much as it is for John right now?
I think John's concerns are very valid. I think John's concerns are very valid. Obviously, there is a lot of conflict around the world right now. We have had nuclear weapons in the mix, unfortunately, since the end of World War II, and we have to consider that as a country. I think because the United States is not currently officially involved in any of these conflicts directly, it may not be as much a thing at the forefront of mind of most voters as things like the economy and women's health care have been. But certainly Americans are thinking about these issues and America's role in the world and the differences between how former President Trump and Vice President Harris may handle these conflicts. And so I think it's good to be reminded of these issues that sometimes fall a little bit to the back burner, but are nonetheless obviously of tremendous importance.
Yeah, John, I want to thank you so much for calling and bringing light to this. Really appreciate your call, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night. Now, I again, if you're listening, this is Nashville. We're giving you the election night rundown as we're finding it. You can give us a call, 615-760-2000, 615-760-2000. We are live. We've got about 7 minutes left, but we're live. I'm here with Dr. Jason Reineke and Paige Pfleger. Now, Paige.
Yes.
Question.
Answer.
If Donald Trump loses, he says that's it for him. He's done. He's not going to run again. He's been in the Republican Party for a very long time. Do they have a non-Trump faction that will vie for leadership should Trump lose? And kind of where do you think they'll go from here?
They meaning the Republican Party?
Yes.
It's a great question. I don't know if I am the one to answer that, honestly. Do you have thoughts?
Well, I mean, really, the Republican Party has become synonymous with Donald Trump over the last 9 or 10 years. And so it'll be very interesting to see. I think maybe we got some hints about that during the primary process this time around, with Ron DeSantis kind of being the last person standing before stepping aside to give former President Trump a path to the nomination. Nikki Haley was one of his most fervent challengers during the primary season, and has since really come back home, if you will, to the Team Trump tent. And so it's really hard to say. It may be tempting to kind of look at J.D. Vance as somebody who might step into that role as the current vice presidential nominee. But if you look historically, vice presidents don't have the best of luck when they try to move up to the presidential race, with a few exceptions. And so yeah, it's really hard to say where the Republican Party goes eventually, someday, from Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris, the campaign has really not put a lot of emphasis on the fact that she would be the first woman president, front and center. She hasn't made a big deal about that. A lot of voters have, but the campaign didn't. Why do both of you think that is?
I mean, being a woman isn't always the most popular thing to be in a room, Khalil.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it has been really interesting. She's walked this really fine line of not putting forth that she would be the first woman president, not like fully embodying that in the way that we saw the Clinton campaign. But it is interesting, too, because she has made women's reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, and abortion at the forefront of her campaign. Mm-hmm. And so it has been this interesting line to watch her walk as far as appealing to women voters. I mean, everyone's seen that ad at this point of the women who go with their Trump-supporting husbands to the polls and they make eye contact with each other, because she is making this kind of direct appeal to women and to even parents who are thinking about their daughters when they go to the poll, thinking of their bodily autonomy and their freedom to have choices. And I think it has been really interesting to see her make that appeal while also trying to be a little bit more reserved about not running as the first female president.
Mm.
I think really kind of you hit on something with the word reserve there, because one of the things that I've kind of noticed and thought about as the campaign has entered the home stretch in this regard is, as the Obamas have gotten more involved on the Democratic side of campaigning, it's kind of a reminder of how former President Obama handled issues of race during his campaigns and presidency, not trying to hide these things or deny them about himself at all, but also not really forefronting them either. And I think Vice President Harris is definitely a student of Obama's success in those ways.
All right, we're going to get some predictions. We got about 2.5 minutes left. Who do either of you think is going to win the presidential election?
Oh, God.
I'm going to go back and say that the only person who doesn't know what they're talking about is the person who says they know who's going to win. I think there are going to be plenty of people who are willing to take that coin flip chance and hopefully come out looking like a genius on the other side if they guessed right, and hoping that everybody forgets about it if they don't say. But I'm not in the prediction business. I think it's too close to call. And people have talked a lot today about dealing with stress and anxiety around the election and those kind of things. And I think we deal with important issues, and a responsible citizen has to think about those. And there's going to be some discomfort that comes with that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But in terms of waiting for the results and trying to guess who's going to win, that is the time, I think, to take the dog for a walk, to make some cookies, to do the kind of stress relief things that you need to do, because the votes are going to be cast, they're going to be counted, problems are going to be dealt with, and we're all going to find out when we find out.
Paige, you're not touching this one, are you?
I think the thing that I will put out there is that it is my greatest hope from this election that one thing that we walk away from is just showing up for one another and our communities on a person-to-person basis. I think regardless of what happens, who wins or who loses, people don't want our country to be as divided as it has been. And I think that showing up for your neighbors, showing up for your community is the best path forward.
That is a sentiment that I've been having with a lot of private conversations.
Yeah.
We really, really want to bring ourselves together so we can be a place where we can understand what the word compromise even means.
Yeah.
You know, right now it's a foreign language to all of us, and people are adamantly against it. All right. That's really all the time we have for this episode, and we're going to see you all at noon tomorrow, and I want to thank our guests for taking time out of their election nights to be with us. Paige Pfleger, she's the criminal justice reporter for WPLN, and she's been winning awards, y'all, because she's that good. And Jason Reineke, Dr. Jason Reineke, is associate professor in the School of Journalism and Strategic Media at MTSU. Thank you both for being here and helping us keep calm. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
All right. And thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini and Catherine Ceces. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our technical director and board operator is Liv Lombardi. Char Daston was on the phones. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to everyone who voted today or voted early. It is our duty as Americans to do it. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. The conversation doesn't end here. Please tweet us, call us online, find us online, or call us and leave us a message at 615-751-2500. This is the United States of America. Key word is united. Whoever wins tomorrow, we're all Americans. We all have to be with each other. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil A. Colonna. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other. I'm